Minister, welcome to New Zealand and thank you very much for your time.
It's good to be here.
New Zealand's Labour Party has ruled out joining AUKUS Pillar Two. What do you make of that decision?
Well, these are decisions for the government of the day in New Zealand. As you know, AUKUS is a technology sharing arrangement when it comes to Pillar Two, and it's entirely up to New Zealand whether it wants to engage on it. But there is a broader issue that we are obviously responding to, which is the reshaping of the region and how we all respond to the fact that the region is being reshaped.
What do you think would be the consequences if New Zealand does not join Pillar Two?
Oh, look, I think those are decisions for New Zealand. Each country responds in the way it sees fit. The broader point I'd make is that certainly in the Pacific, we are in a state of permanent contest. We know that the Pacific is a much more contested area strategically than it has been for a very, very long time. And you can either be an observer of that reshaping or you can be a participant. And I think that those are words that Foreign Minister Peters has used. And like Australia wants to be part of responding to that reshaping, and we certainly welcome the New Zealand government's engagement.
I know your Labour Party has pretty close personal connections with the Labour Party in New Zealand. Did you have a heads up? Did you have any warning they would make that announcement?
Well, we deal with the government of the day. Obviously, we do know people well in the Labour Party here, but obviously on these sorts of issues we deal with the government of the day, and as I said, these are ultimately matters for the government and the people of New Zealand.
So you have the personal connections. Just to be clear though, did you have any warning they would make that announcement?
I'm not going to. We deal with the government of the day.
Do you think New Zealand ultimately faces a binary decision?
Between what and what?
Between our biggest trading partner, maintaining a relationship with China, and our security interests in the region?
Look, I think I said to Australians in the context of the election where we were elected, I said, look, there was a time where you could separate your strategic and your economic relationships, and we've all done that. I mean, our biggest trading partner is China, but I think that time is past, and you have to look at what is occurring in your region, you have to look at what China is seeking to do, and you have to work out how you engaged with a great power that has made its intentions clear. As great powers do, they seek to press their interests, and they seek to influence the region on which they live. That is what great powers do. It's what China is doing. We've taken a lot of steps to stabilise the relationship with China, recognising they are our largest trading partner, but we were very realistic about it. There are things on which we are not going to agree. There are areas where we have differences, and you can't wish those away. You have to think about how you navigate the differences in that relationship.
Does Australia want New Zealand to be part of Pillar Two?
I think Australia wants New Zealand to do what it does so well, which is to be an active part of the Pacific family. And we really welcome New Zealand's engagement in the Pacific Islands Forum and all of its members. It's in that region, and you have a very important and special, I think, role to play in that region.
In the context of Pillar Two, what does playing an active part?
Well,
of the Pacific mean?
I don't. Leave Pillar Two aside. That is one of the ways you can engage. But, for example, it's clear that China has worked and is working quite hard to establish a stronger security presence in the Pacific. That's a matter for them. We think that stability and peace are best preserved by the Pacific family taking responsibility for Pacific security. Now, you've got a key role in that, and we want to keep working with New Zealand and your government, as we are, in ensuring we step up in terms of Pacific security.
Does the United States, under a President Trump, make it a less reliable security partner in the Indo-Pacific?
Look, President Trump has been very clear he wants to change how America is in the world and at home. I mean, he is a candidate for change, so we shouldn't be surprised if there is change. Well, I have made the comment, I think we should have some confidence in our ability to navigate that. You know, we need to be clear about what our interests are and how we press for them. Obviously, we have a very long-standing and deep relationship, long-standing security alliance with the United States, and that remains.
What changes do you anticipate under his presidency when it comes to security
I'm going to
in the US?
I'm going to leave that commentary to you.
Do you accept that, in the eyes of some, the volatility that comes with President Trump's language, if not his leadership, means that making a decision to support something like AUKUS Pillar Two from New Zealand's perspective is perhaps less attractive than it might have been under a different leadership?
I think it's important to remember what Pillar Two is. So Pillar One is the replacement of an existing submarine capability that Australia needs to replace. Pillar Two is technology sharing, project by project. It's not an alliance. It's not a treaty. It's countries saying, we are all working on these particular technologies in the security space, and we will collaborate on them. So I think important to recognise what Pillar Two is and what it is not.
Our former Defence Minister, Andrew Little, intimated he feels the AUKUS process has been irreparably waylaid. It hasn't passed through Congress. We're still waiting for it to achieve much progress, in his view. What would be your response?
I don't think that's grounded in fact. I mean, I think if you look at what has gone through the Congress during the Biden administration, and we've worked very hard at that, and as our ambassador in Washington, there's been a lot of progress made on a bipartisan basis in terms of the legislative changes that needed to happen to enable Pillar One to be operationalised.
In June this year, your government readjusted its 501s policy to take a more hardline approach in deporting people who've committed serious crimes. How is it in the spirit of being a responsible international player to deport criminals who've spent the vast majority of their lives in Australia and have no connections to the place they're being sent to?
Well, each government will obviously look to assure the security of its people, Australia is doing that. We are seeking to do that in a sensible way, in a common sense way, including taking into account the sorts of factors in the hypothetical you just put to me. But obviously, the security of the Australian community is an important factor for a minister to consider.
It's not a hypothetical when it comes to 501s. I mean,
the way you phrase the question.
I mean, there are many examples of people who've moved to Australia at the age of 2 and are being deported back to New Zealand in their 50s with no connections to New Zealand whatsoever. Is that in the spirit of being a responsible international player?
Well, all I can say is this has been a subject of discussion between our Prime Ministers. We indicated the position we would take. We said, we would, obviously, the ministerial power has been adjusted, but we would still take a common sense approach.
Stats obtained here in New Zealand under the Official Information Act by our One News Australia correspondent, Aziz Al-Sa'afin, shows that more than 60% of the 501s who've been deported to New Zealand re-offend. So since the policy was introduced in 2015, there have been thousands of violent offences, hundreds of sexual offences from 501 deportees in New Zealand. Experts say the trauma of splitting up families and deporting people contributes to those high re-offending rates. What kind of country does that to one of its closest friends and allies?
Well, I appreciate this is a sensitive issue in New Zealand, and this has been, obviously a topic under previous governments as well. We've sought to make sensible adjustments, common sense adjustments, whilst maintaining the importance and the primacy of the security of Australians. And I understand that's not something that you might agree with, but obviously the government of the day in Australia has to take what we see as a responsible approach.
When it comes to security in the Pacific, climate change is far and away the most important security concern for many Pacific nations. Australia is one of the world's largest exporters of coal, I think about $140 billion last year. And ministers from your party have recently approved coal mine expansion. How does that serve your credibility when it comes to climate change in Pacific nations?
Well, you're right first, that the climate change is the number one priority of the people of the Pacific, and that has been made clear by leaders in multiple leaders' declarations. And I was Australia's first climate minister, and you know, we have worked very hard to elevate Pacific voices in the international negotiations. I am upfront with them. I've said, look, we have come to government at a time where we had very low levels of renewable energy in our grid. We want to shift from those very low levels to 82% by 2030, 82% renewables by 2030. We have very ambitious targets. It takes a lot to transition our economy. We have been a resource-based economy. Now, we have to shift that resources-based economy to an economy that can prosper in a net zero world, and that's what the government is seeking to do.
You're talking about your domestic energy use there. I'm talking about the $140 billion in coal exports.
Well, and what I'd say to you is you can see over time what the International Energy Agency says will happen to coal consumption. Our responsibility is under the under the UNFCCC, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, to deal with our emissions domestically, and we're seeking to do that. And we also are seeking to develop our capacity as a renewable energy superpower. So we want to be an energy exporter to the world, and we want over time to transition to renewable energy, which is why we are funding hydrogen. It's why we are looking at, I just come from Singapore, how do we get solar energy into Southeast Asia, in particular Singapore. So we are putting a lot of work into that, and we'll continue to do that. It's a, you know, if we could flick a switch and transition all of our energy across the world to renewables, I think people would do that. But that is not the world in which we live. We have to build an energy system globally, which is not predicated on fossil fuels, and that will take time.
I know you're very busy. We very much appreciate you squeezing us in. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, good to speak with you.